Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The story of the transfiguration of Jesus is somewhat confusing until one learns, as we recently did in our spiritual formation class, that it is a post-resurrection event transported earlier in the narrative. In other words, after the resurrection, not long before the ascension, Jesus is greeted by Moses, representing the law, and Elijah, representing the prophets. Moses and Elijah seem to be preparing Jesus for what is about to happen to him, or perhaps they are welcoming him as he transitions. Whatever the case, they are speaking to Christ about what Luke calls his final departure from this period of incarnation on earth. That is, Christ, through whom all the world is made, has been incarnated for 33 years as a very specific person, Jesus, and is now preparing to depart from that state. He's about to drop the remaining vestiges of his incarnation, his embodiment as Jesus. As his transformation commences, he begins to gleam in a way that he had not prior. The appearance of his face changed and his clothes became dazzling white. That is, Peter, John, and James begin to see Christ's glory, which has been partially concealed by his incarnation in the body of Jesus. Our own glory is similarly concealed to some extent, concealed within various limitations imposed by our physical embodiment, emotional, spiritual, physical, intellectual, each of us with our own weaknesses and our own gifts. Some are agile, some are quick thinkers, some are strong, some are deep thinkers, some are emotionally mature, but no one has everything. From within these limiting bodies, one person will see aspects of the world that others miss, so we must depend on one another to get a clearer picture. That's why we have 9 members on our vestry and not 1 or 2. Working together, we approach Christ, who is the whole, present in all things and not merely in one person, as the disciples initially suppose. They think that they can possess him, possess the truth. They do not yet grasp that Christ is in all of us, in all things. Thus we cannot hold on to him. As Christ tells Mary Magdalene at one point, we cannot monopolize him as he is everywhere, in everyone. Christ's truth is experienced in process, through various life events. This is how Christ meets us in our suffering and our joys. Life is how Christ relates to us. In other words, everything we encounter in life is part of our salvation, something from which we learn. We work hard to filter out and to avoid certain experiences, but God teaches us through love and suffering, through change and the unexpected. We gradually learn how to let go of the things of this realm and exist in relationship with God. Some allow themselves to be challenged and to grow towards letting go, and some grasp on, insisting on their own take on reality, their own truth, angry that not everyone agrees with them. They cannot see God for their own opinions. Like the disciples, we must let go of being the ones who know all the answers and learn simply to be with our fellow brothers and sisters, working together to face each thing as it comes. We must let go of our attachments to knowing and dwell in the mystery of the present, whatever that might be. Not understanding this, the disciples want to keep Elijah, Moses, and Christ in their more manageable embodiment. They want to build dwellings and enclose them in. Stay right here. But the 3 cannot be kept, managed, dominated, owned. Life must be experienced. Christ must be experienced, little by little. We cannot absorb all of God at once. It would overwhelm us. And knowing this, Moses veiled his face because he was afraid that the Hebrews would be overcome simply by seeing the effect on him of having been so close to God for a time. The disciples, like the rest of us, are limited and still growing. They require more time, more experiences of Christ in the world, before they can give up their possessiveness and learn to relate to Christ in all things, in all people. Lent will be here on Wednesday. It's a period of renewal of our relationship with God, though I fear it is often turned into an occasion for nothing more than spiritual masochism. By spiritual masochism, I mean yet another way of making ourselves feel superior, this time by torturing ourselves. Giving up something for 40 days that we like has little positive effect on us. People say that it makes us appreciate the thing more, but the fact is, we already liked it. Is an insufficient appreciation of coffee or wine really our greatest problem? There's no point in such elected sacrifice. It mocks those who have no other choice but to do without. We give up chocolate in a world where many people could not have chocolate if they wanted it. Such sacrifices in no way affect the systemic evils that prevent others from having chocolate. Simply put, torturing ourselves does others no good. What is more, we cannot torture ourselves and love ourselves at the same time. And if we cannot love ourselves, we cannot love others. Instead of engaging in such practices, we can use Lent as a time to consider what fears and insecurities keep us enthralled to systems of abuse, rather than embracing the joyous love of God. A question we might use to inform our Lenten journey is, what attachments and escapes ultimately prevent us from seeing and loving others, from being a part of the whole, from letting go of our private truths and simply falling into the hands of the loving God? Whatever keeps us from embracing Christ in all things, whatever we turn to in our insecurity, is fair game. Concretely, this might lead to as many different Lenten practices as there are people. But to give you some ideas, rather than giving up chocolate, determining to buy fair trade cocoa would be a simple practice that helps establish systems that do not abuse. For something more transformative, rather than rejecting dessert, sharing dessert with someone who is lonely is a way to live out the gospel. If we are repressing something that makes us uncomfortable, working to acknowledge that by discussing it with 3 trusted people would be a great practice. If we are attached to the drama of others, replacing the time we spend gossiping with something more meaningful would free us to love. Whatever we choose, we need to pay attention. Awareness is the key to growth. Keep in mind that, ironically, the more we focus on ourselves, the more insecure and grasping we will be. The more we focus on others and the whole, on the other hand, the more we can rejoice in our fellowship with creation. It's a little like driving a car. Remember when we were learning how to drive and we anxiously focused on the front edge of the car? If one looks closely at the car and attempt to control it, one will have an accident. Our instructor had to tell us to look ahead, take in the whole, in order to drive. In choosing a Lenten practice, the more outward our gaze, the better. Beginning this Wednesday, I wish you a meaningful and, yes, joyous Lent.